Welcome back to the Missdiagnosed podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and it's been a minute, huh? I don't even want to look at how long it's been since I published an episode. I've had a lot happen between then and now. Actually, I'm going to look and see. Wow. My last episode published on August 31st. So it's been 2 months since I published an episode, and in that time, a lot has happened. I moved offices, so this is actually the first episode of the show that I'm recording in my new office, which is upstairs in my house. I have a lot going on in the house right now. I sold my company in the middle of October, which is really exciting. I'm really excited to have these guys on board. I think they're making a great investment, and they'll do a great job furthering my overall vision for my company, and it allows me a lot more space to do what I want to do, like this podcast, right? So it's, I think, largely been the mental space, the emotional space that in the time since I last posted an episode, I've been really working on figuring out. And of course, moving the office was not exactly expected. I also live upstairs now. And those of you who've been to my house, some of you listening have been here, you know that I have a master bedroom downstairs and then I have rooms upstairs. Well, my plan is to be able to travel some, and while I'm traveling, there's no reason I can't put this place up on Airbnb, and matter of fact, I've already put this place up on Peerspace, and I have 2 bookings already. People want to rent this place for various different commercial events and parties, things like that. It's a great space for that. That's why this house was built, and I don't need to be here all the time. I'm not here all the time, and so why not monetize it? And that's exactly what I'm doing. So, and at the end of the last episode, I was giving you guys a lot of exciting hints that my roommate Michelle would be coming on, and that's still on the table. But Michelle doesn't live here anymore. And don't worry, we're still friends. We're still very good friends. In fact, later today, I'm meeting with her as part of a container that we're in together. The universe is pulling us in different directions for what we're doing, and we're such good friends. And we've taught each other so much stuff, and we're continuing to teach each other so much stuff. So it just hasn't happened yet, and that's okay. So here we are. It's November 4th, and I'm back here recording. Something else that was exciting that happened was Anthony William, the medical medium, finally released his new books. And yes, I said books because it's a volume series called Brain Saver and the Brain Saver Protocols. Y'all, this book, I have it sitting in front of me right now. I have the Brain Saver one, not the Brain Saver Protocols. That's downstairs on the couch. So I just opened up to almost the back of the book, and this book has over 600 pages. And I've read probably 75% of it because a lot of it is like cleanse recipes towards the back. But as I flip through it, you'll probably hear me flipping the pages, like you just see all my highlights. I've gone through every single chapter once so far, and I've highlighted a lot of just mind-blowing things. And what I've started to do is index each chapter using index cards. And I want to go through the whole book with you guys on the show, because I know that reading a 600-page book, which is basically like an encyclopedia, a dictionary, a Bible, whatever kind of large volume joke you want to make about it, is not feasible for a lot of y'all. And I don't know how long it'll take for it to be an audio book version, but it absolutely 1000% specifically relates to this podcast topic, the mental health industry and mental illness. Although he doesn't specifically use the word mental illness or mental disorder, and that might be because it doesn't actually exist. Mental illness doesn't exist in the way that we've been told that it does, which is so just mind-blowing to me. Just mind-boggling to me that so many of us, myself included for a long time, were convinced that mental illness is real and it's actually physical and emotional. It's not something wrong with us inherently. We're being told that it's our brains that are the problem, but they don't know what the problem is. And so we're being told that the only way to fix it, and it's not even fix it, it's manage it, is to become part of this machine, this industrial complex machine where we are taking medication and going to psychiatrists on a daily and monthly basis, sometimes weekly, if you're going to see a psychiatrist or insurance pays for therapy of some kind. And more people are getting mentally ill, coming down with a mental illness. more and more people are getting sick, even though there's more and more drugs coming out. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like there's a positive correlation at all. In fact, it seems like there's a causation, that more and more people are getting ill, people are staying ill, nobody's getting better, things are getting worse for a lot of people, the more drugs that are out there. And that bothers me. So that's why I took the time, and I'm currently working through reading the book a second time as I index all the things that I highlighted. And as I do that, I'm going to be producing episodes on each chapter. Some chapters are short, so there might be more than one chapter covering each episode, but I mean, this book is just groundbreaking. My jaw hit the floor so many times, and I'm excited to be sharing this information with you because it needs to get out there in as many ways as possible. And I know that some people listening speak my language. Hopefully, if you are listening, you do speak my language, and it's important that we listen to things that are in words that make sense to us, because some people might read Anthony Williams books and be like, I don't get it. Like, this is too many words. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But if you listen to me and how I explain it in my words, it might make sense to you. And that's true for everybody. When you think about all the world religions, they're basically saying the same things. We're not talking about toxic Christianity where they're actually super judgy and hellfire and brimstone, but talking about love and how love is the answer, and, those basic fundamental concepts that I think in our nature and our guts we know to be true. They're all saying the same thing in different languages, different words. If you think about how many languages there are on the planet, that just makes sense, right? We're all communicating about the same types of things, our human experience. That is the same thing. We all start out as blank canvases when we're babies, and we have different things going on, different parents, different environment, all of these things. Of course, we're going to speak different languages. Interestingly enough, I learned in Anthony Williams' new book, Brain Saver, that certain things can happen in your brain, certain pathogens, certain chemicals, certain invaders, we'll just say, can lodge themselves in certain parts of your brain that make it more difficult to learn languages, more difficult to listen, more difficult to communicate. So you might think you have social anxiety disorder and you're on drugs for it, but that's actually making it worse. But I won't spoil anything for you. We'll get there. Chapter 1 of Brain Saver is just called Save Your Brain. Basically, Anthony busts the myth that we think we know all we need to know to save ourselves, right? The way that the medical industry, the public-facing version of it, right? Because he talks about how there's a classified version that not even the public-facing version, like our doctors and, very well-meaning as they are, don't even know exists. Like, there's puppet masters behind the scenes. It seems like they know what they're talking about. So we think we know all we need to know to save ourselves. Most brain health information out there is basically just trivia. It's misinformation. It's mistakes, false leads, useless studies that are paid for, right? So all those studies out there specifically about coffee and how it has benefits to it, and should you drink coffee, should you not drink coffee? Well, I don't even think there's studies that promote not drinking coffee. I'm probably wrong about that, but, well, let's see. Studies about not drinking coffee. Yeah, I literally Googled studies about not drinking coffee, and it says the first study that came up, well, it was a headline, harvard.edu, caffeinated or not, coffee linked with longer life. That's not true. There's an article on caffeine withdrawal on the NCBI NLMNIH.gov, caffeine use disorder. Coffee drinkers may be at lower risk of early death. That's not true. So the thing that I learned about these headlines is that it's all marketing, because, CNN wants you to click on their website, Healthline wants you to click on their website, pharmaceutical companies pay for, and industry leaders pay for these articles to be pushed so more people will buy coffee. So I Googled studies about not drinking coffee. Maybe my search terms weren't good. I don't know. But my point is, there's nobody out there that has the money or is willing to pay for the money to prove that drinking coffee is not good for you. Because if there's nobody to pay for the studies, then what's the point, They need money to do the studies, but there's no gain for anybody except us, the consumers, the public, if we learn that coffee is bad for us, right? So that's why I know that the information in Medical Medium's books is true, because he doesn't have like a massive industry that he's trying to protect. You know, when you read something, you can just tell that somebody is being authentic. You can listen to somebody, you can tell they're being authentic. It would take a lot of work for Anthony William to fake everything that he's done over the last 30 years, you know, and even in the last 10 years, the books that he's written, the podcasts, he's tireless about it, and you can tell he knows what he's talking about. No, he's not a doctor, but if you read his testimonials and the forwards to his book, they're all written by doctors that consulted him specifically to help their patients get well when they couldn't figure it out on their own, despite having expensive degrees. Right? Anthony William has more experience than many doctors too, having done this since he was basically 4 years old and having learned from a supernatural source, which, take it or leave it, we live in a supernatural world. You don't have to believe that, but that doesn't mean it's not true, right? That's, I think, what a lot of people don't understand about belief, is that just because you don't believe something doesn't mean it's not real and isn't going to exist without your consent or knowledge or belief, you know? So circling back, most of this health information that's out there is paid for, or is theories. It's marketing traps that offer us false hope, that give us permission to poison ourselves, you know, by way of coffee. Yeah, there might be something that can be linked back, like if there's antioxidants in coffee, right? Antioxidants have positive properties, but you know, wild blueberries have a gajillion times more, and yes, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point, a gajillion times more antioxidants in coffee. There's nobody paying for studies about the efficacy of wild blueberries. There's none. I'll Google it right now. Scientific studies about wild blueberries. Okay, actually, in the time between the last episode that I published, I don't know if this is, I'll have to review this, but it's funny. New study indicates wild blueberries improve brain's processing speed. September 19th, 2022. This is exciting. Okay, so there's scientific studies about wild blueberries. You should Google it and read it. But my point being is you're not going to see those pushed all over CNN. Like, even on this search results where I Googled scientific studies about wild blueberries, I don't see CNN, I don't see Healthline, I see Independent Tribune, I see Science Daily published an article in 2013. I see something from 2016. There's no major news outlets that are promoting this, which means people aren't going to see it, right? Because even though there's a .gov recent research on the health benefits of blueberries, and that's not wild blueberries, 2020, it's cited by 201 people. And then the antioxidant level of Alaska's wild berries, not necessarily blueberries, cited by 41 people. That came out in 2013. Hopefully you see what I'm saying, in that it doesn't matter that the information exists if people don't see it. Nobody paying for that information to be pushed. And that's, for all intents and purposes, what we're seeing when we Google like scientific studies about, we'll just change the search terms real quick to coffee. I'm going to see what comes up. So we have that Harvard website that comes up. USA Today, 2022. Yeah, 2022, June. Mayo Clinic, that's a massive website. Verywell Health, massive website. Healthline.com. I mean, these are websites that can be paid by advertisers. And if you just click on like Verywell Health, I'm going to tell you what I see here. So we have a Medicare ad. We have a drug ad for people with mild to moderate eczema, which is an autoimmune skin condition that can be solved with diet. And Medical Medium talks about it a lot. We have another drug ad, which is for the hepatitis C virus. So drug companies and other industries pay money to have this information pushed. Oh, there's another drug ad. This one is for, I can't even figure it out. Oh, it's another eczema one. Yeah. So it's marketing, people. These articles seem confident in the information and the way that they present the information. It seems trustworthy because of all the technical terms. And I'm just going to tell you, I am a marketer. I just sold a company for multiple millions of dollars. And I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to tell you that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to marketing. It's marketing. You use terminology to persuade, to convince people to make certain choices. That can either be very beneficial, as it was in the case with my brand, Proofread Anywhere, helping people by showing them, hey, if you do what I did, which is start a proofreading business, and that's exactly what I had. I had a proofreading business for 3 years before I started proofreadanywhere.com, and I had a full-time income working part-time hours, you know. teaching people that if you do what I did, your life could change forever. Like, and it's not about, oh, you're going to be a proofreader forever if you take my course. Like, I wasn't a proofreader forever. It was a stepping stone to a lot bigger things. So it's getting people to take that step. So point being, getting people to believe in themselves enough to take a step, right? But the point of these articles is about getting you to believe in a substance, getting you to notice an ad and click on an ad about a substance, getting them to put their power outside of themselves, getting them to trust a doctor, trust these websites that this study suggests. This is a headline I'm reading on the verywellhealth.com page at the very bottom. Study suggests ADHD drugs could treat Alzheimer's symptoms. And then the next one, health news, can Centrum Silver improve memory? You know that's paid for. New tea research boasts heart, brain, and immune benefits. And yes, tea has a lot of benefits, but there's still industries behind these. There's big industrial complexes that power these industries. And another thing that I learned from this book was that caffeine is in a lot of pharmaceuticals. So people think they're feeling better because they're getting adrenaline pumped through their system because of the caffeine. And it improves people's perception of the efficacy of the drug artificially. Isn't that wild? Because when adrenaline is released through your system, it is corrosive to your body system, but it has this kind of, like when you drink a cup of coffee, or like I've been drinking cacao, but I've stopped for, I guess it's been almost a week now. Yeah, it's been a week since I stopped drinking cacao, because I realized I was craving it. Even though it doesn't have as much caffeine, it's like a seventh of the caffeine, it still has some caffeine. And then it has theobromine, which is a very similar compound to caffeine, has a lot of the same effects. It can raise your heart rate artificially, just something that I don't want to use anything but some ceremonially, not every day, which is where I was going with it. And I didn't like that. So yeah, anyway, circling back, all this stuff seems so legitimate, so true, so real, so advanced, but it's actually not. And I forgot where exactly it was in the book. It's not in chapter 1, but I mean, scientists know 0.00000, I think it was 5 zeros, 1% possible information there is to know about how the brain works and functions. 0.0000001. And this book contains way more than that. It's information that no doctor, I mean, that's why this guy hasn't been canceled. He's on all of the major platforms. He hasn't been canceled because there's nobody that can prove him wrong. And if they did run these massive smear campaigns about him, everybody would know that he was actually right. And that's the last thing the industries want. And so coming from a marketing background, I can see that and see that, okay, they're not smearing all the things he's saying. They're just ignoring him and using as much information to keep people confused as they can, right? Promoting autoimmune theories and all these gimmicky things. And I love the chapters in his book. We'll get to them. We're going to go through every single chapter, I promise. All the gimmicky health fads that are out there that are just keeping people sick and having them run in circles. So there's brain diseases that aren't considered brain diseases because medical science and research haven't caught up. Neurologists in general don't know symptoms or conditions are related to the brain. And I went to a neurologist 2 times this year. Did I say neurologist? Neurologist 2 or 3 times this year. I've been to 3 different neurologists, and I got an MRI that showed a pretty big cyst, 8 by 12 millimeters, on my pineal gland in my brain. I have a cyst on my brain. I don't think it's there anymore, just going from a feeling, because I learned from this book what causes it, and we'll get there. So I'm setting you guys up for a lot of exciting episodes to come, because this book is it's going to blow your mind the way it did for me in the best way, and it's so empowering. But going to neurologists, they had no idea. They had no freaking clue. They were like, yeah, you have a cyst. It doesn't really do anything. It's not caused by anything. It just happens. You don't have to worry about it. But it actually does cause symptoms. It does cause things. And it is caused by something. And the Brain Saver book addresses it head on. No pun intended. I'm going to have a lot of brain jokes, I'm sure. The brain is so freaking important. I mean, if you think about it, how little do we actually learn about our brain and how important it is? Very little, right? Everything in our bodies is connected to the brain. It is a completely integrated system. And this isn't quackery. It's the truth, okay? When I say, going to a separate hematologist, oncologist, because there's something wrong with your bone marrow that's causing your bones to produce too many platelets, as was my case. I got diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer in October 2019, because my bone marrow was making too many platelets. And they were like, oh, it could be, if we ruled out infection, which they didn't rule out infection. There just isn't any medical testing to prove that there's infection in your bones. They weren't looking for Epstein-Barr virus. They weren't looking for things that would be causing this inflammation. But your bone marrow can have infection. Your bone marrow can be inflamed. It's an immune response. Like, your blood is the largest part of your immune system. And so if your bone marrow is making too many platelets, it's an immune response. Come to find out, it took me 3 years, but there was a massive immune response happening. And the whole time, they had me coming in every 3 months to get my blood tested. I took a year off when I was in Amsterdam, but then I got back into it. And then I realized, like, taking all this blood was taking away my immune system and putting my body under more stress to replace it. And my hematologist wanted to put me on chemo pills in January. I was like, no, no. And then 5 months later, in May, when I discovered the medical medium books, I learned just what was actually happening and came to the conclusion that it is very likely, and I won't know until I go and get my blood tested again, which I'm not going to do until at least the middle of March, maybe later, to confirm my blood counts have normalized since I switched to protocols that would reduce inflammation and get rid of the infections that were in my body, mycoplasma pneumonia and Epstein-Barr virus. And maybe other viruses. I don't know. But all I know now is I'm doing everything I can to make my body inhospitable to viruses and pathogens and cleaning things up so my body's not under stress that I don't even know about, right? But I can feel. And that's honestly, like, you guys, that's what mental illness, what we've been told is, something wrong with just our brains. Like, it's our bodies and our brains that are under stress. And these symptoms that we're feeling are not just symptoms of mental illness. They have a real cause that's physical. And those causes are what's causing our symptoms. So being told that we have a mental illness that only a pill can fix, pill and therapy, lifelong care, management, there's no cure, like, oh, it's ridiculous. Like, if you Google any mental disorder, they'll be like, there's no cure. And often medication and treatment are recommended for life. It's just so abysmally depressing, but there's no motivation on their part to get you well. And as we go through this book together, you'll see that. So we're talking about the immune system, right? The immune system's job is to devour toxins and pathogens. That's what it's trying to do. The liver's job is to filtrate and neutralize the stuff that comes into your body and your adrenal system. Your adrenal's job is to release specific blends of adrenaline to protect the brain from stress. These three systems of your body, they have an innate drive to save the brain because the brain is connected to everything. It's that integrated system. And most of us are disconnected from what our brains and bodies actually need. We're just completely unaware because we're not taught, okay, you can eat macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets and that's food, right? It's not food. Our bodies do not recognize the processed garbage that we put into our bodies unknowingly, right? And this is not where we judge ourselves, right? Everything is love. Everything else is an illusion. Judgment comes from a place of fear. We're not judging ourselves. We are becoming enlightened, loving beings by learning the truth about how to get ourselves well, and we have to love ourselves enough to see past all of the BS, right? All the bullshit that we've been told and understand just objectively, right? We're not subjectively judging ourselves, getting mad at ourselves for being disconnected and unaware. Like, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. There's a lot of stuff that's working against us to keep us in the dark for a purpose, and we'll get to that as well. So our brain has abilities to heal beyond what medical research and science are aware of. So we need to remove foreign invaders, like the industry-created pathogens and toxins. And yes, I said industry-created pathogens. This isn't some conspiracy theory. There are virus labs out there that are creating viruses. They are growing them on eggs in petri dishes, feeding them with eggs, feeding them with different things with a purpose. They're bioweapons, and there's toxins that are in your brain. It's not a question of if they're there. They are there. Everybody has toxins and pathogens. Everybody. And it's not me pointing fingers, right? I got them too. We all got them. The first line of defense in the mainstream medical world back in I don't even remember. I'm going to Google that. Okay. Mercury. So the introduction of mercury by means of intravenous injections was first recommended in 1892. Okay, in the 16th century, increasingly used in the 16th century AD, especially after the use was advocated by Paracelsus, people drank mercury. blue mass. It was the name of a mercury-based medicine common from the 17th to the 19th centuries. Mercury is still used in very small amounts as a preservative in some vaccines and pharmaceuticals. And this is on the World Health Organization website. That is a toxin, and it is in our brain, and it is passed down. It can contaminate sperm and eggs, and it can be passed down to us. That's what I'm saying. It's not all our fault, right? There's things that are sprayed into the air, like when I walk around the lake near my house, and hey, there's stuff that's sprayed on my lawn before I understood what it was. I signed up for a whole year to have my lawn treated so it would stay green and keep weeds out, right? The stuff that's sprayed on our food, we don't all have control over that, and not everybody can afford organics. Not always is organic stuff available, right? There's things that are outside of our control, but we can, with our awareness, take steps to keep that stuff at a minimum as much as possible, like getting better air filters, maybe getting an air purifier, knowing when the lawn is going to be sprayed and staying away from it while it's in the air. So yeah, it's not a question of if we have pathogens and toxins in our brain. They are there. There's no question. And the medical industry is corrupted. There's no question about that either. They benefit from keeping us dumbed down and sick. And that's why I think these articles like on Healthline, CNN that are promoting all these things, people think those are authoritative sources. So they read it on Healthline, or they read it on CNN, or they read it on MSNBC's website, or any of these front-facing websites, even the World Health Organization, the National Institute of Mental Health website, all these things that have what looks like authoritative information on bipolar disorder or whatever mental illness, depression. They tell you it's a chemical imbalance in the brain and that you need an SSRI. They're not going to put it at front page on those websites that gigantic study came out in July this year about how the SSRIs are not actually effective at all. They're not going to say that the studies that prove their efficacy were funded by drug companies. They're not going to say that. So that means you are the power. That's what Anthony says towards the end of the Save Your Brain chapter in the book, that you are the power. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, more people are getting sick than ever before. Brain-related illness, chronic illness, including what we know as mental illness, is rising exponentially faster now than at any other time in history. So we have to become empowered to defend ourselves. And a quote I found really poignant in the book is this: our greatest line of defense against threats to our brain and neurological health is our brain itself. So we have to use our brain. We have to use our brains, what's left of our brains, right? And I want to tell you as well that the brain has some incredible qualities and abilities that science has not discovered yet. And I know that that your brain is a lot smarter than you think it is. You may have this gut reaction, be like, oh, well, it's not in the science book I read in high school. It's not true, right? And I've been there, so I know what that's like. I know what it's like to think, oh, well, if I didn't learn about it, or if I didn't know about it, then it's not happening, right? If you've never been to New York, does that mean it's not there? It's kind of the same thing. So my hope in going through this entire gigantic book with you is that you'll be able to discover, like I have, what was wrong all along, and that you'll be empowered to take steps, maybe even buy your own copy of the book and be like, I got to read more about this, because there's some long chapters in this book. There's one about the metals in your brain. It's called Your Alloy Brain, that it's so long. It's so long because it's a very complex process, how metals work with our brain, which is mostly electricity. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I'm really excited about it. And I'll leave you with this. Yeah, okay, I found the exact quote from the book. Your brain has abilities to heal beyond what medical research and science are aware of today. Your brain is waiting for you to discover its need to remove foreign invaders, such as industry-created pathogens and toxins that have entered your brain. Your brain is waiting for you to access information that's above a mostly corrupted medical industry that benefits from keeping your brain dumbed down and sick. And keeping in mind that while you're doing this, the industries that are responsible for the circumstances that we find ourselves in, with our brains having all this nonsense crap in them and making us sick, the industries are being protected. So I want you to feel empowered. At the end of this episode, I guess we'll call this season 2, right? We took a 2-month hiatus. This is season 2 of the Missdiagnosed podcast. This is episode 1 of season 2. We're going through chapter by chapter medical medium Anthony Williams' new book, Brain Saver, and we just went over Save Your Brain, the highlights, in my opinion. And I'm just really excited to be on this journey with you. I am excited that you're here. my hope for you is that you stick around as long as possible and become part of this movement with me to save our brains, because our brains are the gateway to us being able to have our best possible life. And you deserve that. You deserve to have the best chance at having the best life possible. I deserve that. And it took me a while to get to a place where I could say that I really deserved it, and that there was a lot of self-judgment against myself for like the past, but the past not there anymore. Like, I don't live there. Past isn't real. The only thing that's real is love, right? I learned that from a book that I'm reading right now called A Return to Love, which is a book by Marianne Williamson that goes over the concepts found in a set of texts called A Course in Miracles, which I have heard about but have never read. And I'm really grateful for this book teaching me the concept so far. I'm like maybe a little over a third of the way through it, and just learning that our self-judgment isn't real. Like, it's all in our heads. So that part is all in our heads. And what I'm learning through this book as a little, I'm not going to do any spoilers, right? But as a preview, the things that camp out in our brains, these pathogens, these toxins, they keep us disempowered, because what they do is they mess with the neuron pathways that affect how we think. And that includes about how we think about ourselves. And so when I tell you that it's not your fault, I really mean it's not your fault. So you can stop judging yourself. You can stop thinking that there's something inherently wrong with you that'll never go away. You can stop subscribing to the disempowering agenda of the pharmaceutical industries that tell you that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. Because if you do, there's a reason for it. And when you know that reason, you can take care of that reason, and then you don't have a chemical imbalance in your brain. And I can tell you that the pharmaceuticals that they give you have toxins in them, in addition to their effects of whatever they think they're trying to do, selectively like inhibit the uptake of serotonin, causes a chemical imbalance. And that's why you become dependent on them. And if you stop taking them cold turkey, you die. And if you stop taking them too quickly, you experience some massive side effects, withdrawal effects, is because it is a very dangerous chemical. So at the end of every episode, you always hear my little spiel about seeking help from a very caring and understanding and supportive medical professional to help you get off those drugs. They are very dangerous, and it's great to recognize that, but it's also very dangerous to stop taking them. With that said, thank you for joining me for this episode of Season 2, the first episode of Season 2 of the Missdiagnosed podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Pyle, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Missdiagnosed. If this show has helped you in any way, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. Sharing your experience will help others who are lost in the darkness find their own way out of the science of lies. Please note that while I may go in depth into medical topics and have acquired substantial medical knowledge, I am not a medical doctor. I'm a researcher. I'm a messenger of hope for other survivors of industrialized psychiatry. Because of how toxic psychiatric drugs are, it can be extremely dangerous, even life-threatening, to suddenly stop taking certain drugs. This is especially true for antidepressants, antipsychotics, and benzodiazepines. The longer you've taken the drug, the more dangerous withdrawal can be. If you want to heal your brain and soul naturally, the way it was designed to do, please seek the help of a compassionate and patient-centered physician to start the process of withdrawing from them as safely as possible. It will take time for your brain to reacclimate to life without the drugs, and there are doctors out there who will support you in your quest to save your brain. Never give up. You can heal.